Tom Petty is one of the greatest musical artists of all time, and he's my personal favorite. With an incredible discography spanning 40 years, he's made many songs that you already know. Unfortunately, on October 2nd of 2017, he died of an accidental painkiller overdose because of hip pains he got during his 40th anniversary tour. But these days, dying is far from the end for any popular musical artist, and his estate has consistently put out new music, merchandise, and more in the years that have followed his passing. However, does all of this come from a place of sincerity, out of a respect for his legacy, or is it just a way for his estate to get a quick buck? Today we're going to look at all of the music his estate has put out since his passing, and we're going to analyze the quality of each release. Before we really get into things, we probably should establish who his estate really is. From what I could gather, it seems like his estate was solely managed by his wife Dana until 2019, when his daughters Adria and Anakim filed a lawsuit. And since they did that, it seems like Dana, Adria, and Anakim all now have equal control over Tom Petty's music and image. And with that out of the way, let's get into the music. The first Tom Petty posthumous release was released on September 28, 2018, and it's called An American Treasure. It's a compilation album that focuses on some more obscure tracks, featuring previously unreleased songs, alternate versions of songs, and album songs that they wanted to spotlight. It came in a 2-CD and a 4-CD deluxe version, and I'll be reviewing the 4-CD version. The first thing that stuck out to me was the title and album art. To me, it just screams that Tom Petty is dead. The artwork itself is just kind of depressing, and it's a completely different vibe to the rest of his discography, even his more serious albums like Echo. And no person that's alive would name an album about themselves an American treasure unless they had a massive ego. And I don't want to be constantly reminded when listening to Tom Petty music that Tom Petty is dead. My last nitpick on the cover is that it's listed as a Tom Petty solo album, when every single other Tom Petty compilation album is listed with the Heartbreakers. And yes, most of the songs on An American Treasure are Heartbreakers songs. It is listed as by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers on streaming services, even though on the cover it clearly says just Tom Petty. Anyway, once you actually get to what's in here, things start to turn around for the better. First off, the packaging is really great, giving information on the songs. However, some songs don't have any details at all, including some of the best songs on the album. There are some really great songs on here. Keep a Little Soul is so good it single-handedly justifies this album's existence. And Lost in Your Eyes is the best Mudcrutch track from the 70s. And it's cool seeing stuff like the original 1976 version of Surrender. However, not everything is perfect with the track listing, mainly the alternate versions. They're just so similar to the original version that they barely feel any different. Most of the times, they just have an extended outro. Only a few of them even use different takes. To me, it kinda just seems like the alternate versions are an excuse to fill the album with more previously released songs. There's also some little minor errors. The live version of I Won't Back Down is listed as being from 1987 when it's actually from 1997. The song wasn't even out yet in 87. If they got that simple date wrong, it makes me wonder if any of the other information is inaccurate. Overall, I do appreciate this release. It's kind of like a sequel to Playback, the previous compilation album that had a bunch of obscure stuff on it. And there's some amazing stuff here. I just wish it wasn't so padded out. They could have done a better job, and considering the stuff like the album artwork and title, this is a good release, but they could have done a much better job. Moving on to 2019, the album they released this year was The Best of Everything. It's a career-spanning 2-CD greatest hits album. Now, at first I thought, doesn't Tom Petty already have a 2-CD greatest hits album? And yes, Anthology Through the Years was released in 2000 and was the previous Tom Petty 2-CD compilation album. However, Anthology Through the Years is kind of bizarre. It was released by MCA, not Warner Brothers, so that means it only includes songs up until greatest hits, which kind of makes this album redundant because you could just do greatest hits. So that makes The Best of Everything more necessary than I initially thought. However, even with that said, this album is still kind of unnecessary. Tom Petty already has an amazing greatest hits album, and the thing is that in the era of streaming, greatest hits albums in general are kind of obsolete. You can just go to his artist page and check out the Essentials playlist, which doesn't have the exact same songs, but gives you the same idea. Additionally, the organization on the Best of Everything is kind of a mess. I can't find any rhyme or reason as to why the songs are ordered this way. All the compilation albums that were put out when Tom Petty was alive were all ordered chronologically, which made sense. However, the Best of Everything isn't ordered chronologically, it isn't ordered alphabetically, and it's not even ordered by popularity or anything. It just seems to be sorted randomly. Heck, an American Treasure went out of its way to organize its songs by decade, which makes it weird that the immediate next release just has everything randomly scattered. However, the Best of Everything does actually include some new stuff. It includes a alternate version of the song The Best of Everything that it's named after, and it includes a new verse, so that is nice to see. There's also a new song called For Real, which was recorded in 2000. The 2000 date is actually pretty significant because it was the last time any new songs were recorded with Howie Epstein. So it is cool to see songs from this era being released. However, this is just the kind of stuff that should have just been included in an American Treasure, and it's not like they didn't have room left over on the discs. I will compliment this album on having good enough album artwork and a good title. However, overall this album feels redundant, and I like most of the other Tom Petty compilation albums more. But it's not like this release is, like, malicious or anything. In 2020, Petty's estate put out their biggest posthumous release yet, Wildflowers and All the Rest. Tom Petty's 1994 solo album Wildflowers was originally supposed to be a 2-CD album, but the studio made him cut it down to 1 CD. This album is supposed to store the original vision of the Wildflowers album. Tom Petty himself actually started work on this release back in 2015, and they even released a single, Somewhere Under Heaven. But the album had to be pushed back, and it wasn't able to be finished until after his death. Looking at the music, the first disc is just a remastered version of the original album. The second disc is where all the new stuff is. It might look like this album has 10 new songs, but that's not really the case. California, Hope You Never, Climb That Hill, and Hung Up and Overdue are all taken from the album's songs and music from the motion picture She's the One, although these songs were originally intended for Wildflowers. So it does make sense that they're here. Also in the track list, Climb That Hill Blues is just an alternate rendition of Climb That Hill, so it's not really a new song. Plus, while it was for this album, Somewhere Under Heaven was released 5 years before this album came out, so it doesn't really feel like a new song. So that leaves us with only 4 songs that are actually new. So while someone who's unfamiliar with Petty's catalog wouldn't notice how many of these songs are old, it's something that's hard to ignore if you're familiar with albums like She's the One. I do wonder why a song like Girl on LSD, which was a song that was cut from Wildflowers because of its lyrics, and instead released as the vinyl B-side for You Don't Know How It Feels, wasn't included on this album. While this would be another old song on the album, it would be appreciated because Girl on LSD was only ever released on vinyl, while all these other old songs are on streaming and CD. Just these 2 discs isn't the end of Wildflowers and All the Rest, as they released a 4-CD deluxe version, and then a 5-CD $150 super deluxe version. Don't worry, if you want to listen to the 5th disc, you can find the super deluxe version on streaming. Oh wait, no, they lied. This is actually just the regular deluxe version that they mislabeled as the super deluxe version. Yeah, if you wanted this 5th disc when the album came out, you had to pony up that cash. So let's take a look at those other discs. The 3rd CD is called Home Recordings. This has old versions of Wildflower songs recorded by Tom Petty by himself in his home studio. This is pretty interesting, as it lets you look into the process of making the album. For example, the early version of You Don't Know How It Feels has some lyrics that would eventually end up in Crawling Back to You, and that's pretty cool to see. There's also 3 songs here that didn't make the album or All the Rest. It makes me wonder if these songs ever got a full recording or if they'll forever stay as home recordings. Especially considering the fact that all these home recordings feel pretty empty considering it's only Tom Petty, and they don't have any of the other members of the band, and they really brought these songs to life. So while seeing the earlier versions of all these songs is cool, I don't see myself returning to this one often, because the final versions are pretty much objectively better most of the time. Anyway, the 4th disc is Wildflowers Live, and it's a live album featuring songs from the Wildflowers era. I have no complaints about this one. Tom Petty always sounds great live, and just like the previous live album, the Live Anthology, each song seamlessly blends into the next, allowing the whole thing to feel like one continuous concert. So yeah, I really like this disc. Now let's take a look at the 5th CD you had to pay over $100 extra for compared to the regular deluxe version. It's called Finding Wildflowers Alternate Versions, and it features alternate versions of Wildflowers songs. I will give it credit, these actually sound different compared to the originals, unlike the alternate versions on An American Treasure. And hey, check it out, it's Girl on LSD! It's listed as an alternate version, but it's not. It's just the original version completely unaltered that they've listed as an alternate version. There's also 2 other songs out here that aren't alternate versions, and these ones are just being released for the first time. I guess that these songs being here does give the disc more value, but they feel out of place as not alternate versions in an album called Alternate Versions. And plus, these songs really should have just been on the All the Rest disc. That one was pretty lacking in terms of songs, and these songs being there would have done a lot to make that disc better. And plus, you wouldn't have had to spend $150 to listen to them. Overall, I'm conflicted about Wildflowers and All the Rest. There's a lot of great stuff in here, and hey, the packaging is really great, but its release strategy really leaves a sour taste in my mouth, with the fact that they lied about the Super Deluxe version being on streaming, and having to pay over $100 more to get the 5th disc. It's obvious that a lot of care was put into this release, both by Tom himself and his family, but I still can't help but feel a little disappointed by it. In 2021, we actually got 2 releases, starting with Angel Dream, a reimagining of the album songs and music from the motion picture She's the One. I guess the idea was to make it seem more like an actual album and less like just a soundtrack. That's a good idea in theory, but I didn't really like the execution. Like I said earlier, the original She's the One album had 4 songs included in Wildflowers and All the Rest, so those have all been removed. Then, they removed the 2 instrumental tracks. And then, they removed Wall's Circus and Angel Dream No. 4, leaving Wall's No. 3 and Angel Dream No. 2 as the only versions of those songs. This is pretty lame, as while I do prefer Angel Dream No. 2 over No. 4, Wall's Circus is the much superior version of Walls, and it was the lead single for the original album. That's right, they removed this album's lead single. In those songs' place, we got One of Life's Little Mysteries, 105 Degrees, a cover of 13 Days by J.J. Cale, and an instrumental cover of the song Angel Dream that they titled French Disconnection for some reason. Supernatural Radio also got an extended version of this album, which is nice. And the extended version is my preferred version of this song. It should be noted that with all these changes, you are getting overall less music than the original. This release is 44 minutes, while the original album was 52 minutes long. I really don't like this release because it takes away a lot of the character of the original album. It was unique having instrumental songs, and it was also cool seeing different renditions of the same song on the same album. All of that personality is removed, and while the new stuff that's here is good, I'll pretty much only listen to Angel Dream if I want to listen to one of those new songs. And additionally, I'm not a big fan of the album art on this one. It's weird how Tom is staring off into space and for some reason he looks like Kurt Cobain. While it is a little basic, I like how bold and unapologetic the yellow is on the original. This could just be because the original has existed longer, but I feel like its artwork feels a lot more natural with the rest of his discography as opposed to the new one. And with all of that said, the worst part about this release is that when they put it out, they stopped production of all physical copies of the original, which is especially lame for vinyl collectors, as the original was released at a time when vinyl was not very popular, and so the vinyl for this one can be pretty expensive. It feels like they stopped producing the original to try to encourage people to buy both Angel Dream and Wildflowers and All the Rest, just to get the full album. And even then, you're not getting the full album, as you have to get the best of everything to get Wall's Circus. And even if you buy all 3 of these albums, you're missing 3 songs from the original. Pretty scummy behavior on the part of Petty's estate. The second release we got in 2021 was a standalone re-release of the Finding Wildflowers disc. It is cool that they finally made it so that you didn't have to spend $150 on this disc, but this disc alone kinda doesn't deserve a standalone release if they never initially made it so that you had to spend $150 on it. Pretty much the only reason I ever listened to this album is for Girl on LSD or Driving Down to Georgia. The best part about the standalone release is that it did make these songs available on streaming for the first time, which I do like. In 2022, Live at the Fillmore 1997 was released. This is a live album that covers the Heartbreakers' 30-day residency at the Fillmore in San Francisco. And, you know what? I actually really like this release. At first, I wasn't a fan of the maximalist album art, but it's really grown on me. There's a 2 CD version and a 4 CD version, and while there is a ridiculous uber deluxe version, thankfully no music was locked behind it. The live anthology was Petty's previous major live album, and that one took you all over Petty's career with shows spanning 3 decades. This album, on the other hand, brings you to a very specific point in time, and I think that's really cool because it allows Live at the Fillmore and the live anthology to complement each other. There are several obscure songs like Heartbreakers Beach Party, and there's unique renditions of popular songs like American Girl and I Won't Back Down. We also see amazing covers of songs like I Can't Get No Satisfaction and Friend of the Devil. They even bring out Roger McGuinn from The Byrds for Disc 3, which is really cool. It's all put together very well, and all the songs transition smoothly between each other. My one complaint about the album is that several heavy hitters were already included in previous albums like the Live Anthology and American Treasure and Wildflowers Live, which kinda takes away from this release. However, I am more likely to listen to those songs in this album because of how they connect to the other songs. Overall, this is just a really good live album, and it pretty much gives me everything I would have wanted from a new Tom Petty live album. One thing that's nice is some of the goodies that they normally reserve for the super deluxe version of an album was included in the regular deluxe version. You get some guitar picks and a fake backstage pass and a patch included with the CD, which I think is really nice. Overall, it is kind of funny that the album I like the most is the one I have the least amount to say about it. But this one is really good. Go listen to it if you're a Tom Petty fan. In 2023, it was kind of looking like we weren't going to get any new releases. Instead, they were just re-releasing the vinyl of Mojo. This is pretty nice because the vinyl of that album was getting pretty expensive. However, it was announced that we actually would be getting a new album, Mojo Extra Mojo Edition. Only on streaming though. It's just the same as the regular Mojo album, except it has 2 new songs at the end. This is perfectly fine, if a little underwhelming. I do have some complaints though. It has the exact same album art as regular Mojo, which makes it hard to differentiate in my library. I also do feel like they could have done more. For example, in 2012 in Europe, they put out the Mojo Limited Tour Edition that contained a second disc that has live songs from the Mojo tour on it. This has gotten fairly expensive and it isn't on streaming, so it would have been nice to see this re-released. My last issue is that they didn't put this out physically at all, which is weird because they were doing that vinyl release, so they couldn't have just included the extra 2 songs? I guess the market for this is pretty small, so I do understand why it doesn't have a physical release. Besides, it's not like any of this stuff is going to be delisted off of streaming anytime soon. Right? As a surprise release on Tom Petty's birthday, What's the Matter with Louise was released as a single on Amazon Music as an Amazon original. It's a song that was an outtake from Wildflowers, which begs the question, why wasn't this song on Wildflowers and All the Rest? The All the Rest section was already pretty lacking in terms of songs, so why did they wait 3 years to release this one? And why is this only on Amazon Music? It doesn't make any sense. You can just buy the song for significantly less than 1 month of an Amazon Music subscription. It's not going to get any Tom Petty fans to switch to Amazon Music because of how little content there is. It's just one song. And ugh, that artwork. The orange border just looks weird and generic, and they have irreversibly put an Amazon logo in Tom Petty's discography. If all of that wasn't bad enough, the Tom Petty Twitter account said that this song would only be available for 90 days. What? Taking a page straight out of Nintendo's book, they will be removing the song after only 3 months. Immediately, once they start doing digital-only releases, they intentionally induce the worst part of digital releases, something being delisted, seemingly for no reason whatsoever. It doesn't even make sense with the partnership with Amazon, as it wouldn't encourage Amazon Music subscriptions, as it would just make it so that subscribing only gets you the song for 3 months. Overall, I don't see how they could have possibly handled the release of this song in a worse way. Anyway, it's very clear that I have several issues with the way that Tom Petty's music has been handled after his passing. However, I do want to make it clear, even for the releases I have been the most critical of, I would still rather they exist than not exist, because it makes it so that these songs are able to be heard by the public and not just kept in the vault. But still, sometimes it really feels like they're only in this for a cheap buck. Although then other times it seems like they legitimately care about his legacy. Overall, there was one album I really liked, several albums I'm mixed on, and then 2 releases I really don't like. Now don't get me wrong, it could have been way worse, but that doesn't mean I can't still ask them to do better. Here's some ways I think they could improve the way they're releasing music. First off, if you're going to make an expanded version of the album, then include all of the vault tracks. Don't wait 3 years to release them. I'd be pretty annoyed if they started doing more Mojo stuff after already releasing the extra Mojo version. Second, I really feel like they need to study Tom's album art and his style to try and make sure the stuff that they're releasing fits in with his discography. Maybe bring back members of the band or prominent collaborators to try and get the style right. Or heck, if that's too hard, maybe they could ask some Tom Petty superfans for some advice. And last off, try to release the stuff on streaming and physically, and then don't delist it off of streaming. I am glad I'm still getting new music from my favorite artist, but they could be doing things a lot better. While I mostly wanted to talk about music, there's still some more stuff to discuss. First off, the Tom Petty merch store. While I am glad that new Tom Petty merch is being made, some of the stuff here is a little ridiculous. Do you want the Tom Petty candle? How about the Tom Petty pencils? Why not get the Tom Petty plate? Or how about this Tom Petty tumbler that just has a pretty generic pattern and then Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers written at the bottom in tiny font? It feels weird how much random crap they put on the store. When Tom was alive, they just had music, clothes, and a few accessories. However, even the clothes now are a little weird. Like, I Heart Tom Petty? Yeah, I do, but you could have made the Heart the Heartbreakers logo and then it would have actually been clever. You can get the poster for the Wildflowers documentary on a blank white t-shirt for some reason. If you liked that one, then surely you want the Angel Dream artwork on a blank white t-shirt. To be honest, most of these designs don't really appeal to me, and the designs that do appeal to me just keep it simple with the logos. However, the worst merch they have ever put out has to have been the collaboration with Rodart. Not only are the designs pretty bad, they don't feel like Tom Petty merch, but the sweatshirt is $253. The sweatpants are $230. But don't worry, the t-shirt is only $150. I get that it's supposed to be a luxury brand, but who is buying this? To improve the merch store, all they have to do is cut the useless crap, keep the design simple and appealing, and don't do any stupid luxury brand collaborations. The other quick thing I want to touch on is the Tom Petty social media. I don't really have any problem with the stuff that's posted on here. It's mostly just promotions and anniversaries and whatnot. But it feels weird that it's being posted on an account for Tom Petty, the person. It feels especially weird when you look at apps like TikTok, where that app came out after he died. In my opinion, this problem can be pretty easily fixed by making the account for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers the band, not Tom Petty the person, so it doesn't feel like they're posting from a dead man's account. In this video, I've been pretty harsh on Tom Petty's estate, and I don't think that Tom Petty's estate is evil or anything. It can't be easy managing the legacy of one of the greatest rock and roll artists of all time. And I do feel like they're doing their best to keep Tom Petty relevant today, even if sometimes it does feel like they only care about the money. I do hope they continue to put out new music, at least as long as there is still good music to be put out. But I just really hope they're willing to change some of their strategies and improve. Thank you very much for watching. Petty forever.